Hooked on Hebrew. This week we're starting the fifth week. We have one more, and we're learning some new letters today, and we're going to be talking about the talit, the tefillin. Those are those little boxes they wear, the Jewish people wear on their forehead and on their bicep. And we're going to be learning about something else on how they prepare and cleanse a body once the person dies, and that's called tahara. So let's put on our glasses and look at the scripture through Hebrew culture and eyes. So the first thing I want to talk about in this fifth class of Hooked on Hebrew is talking about the different books in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, which is called the Tanakh. Now, the Hebrew scriptures contain 24 books in its canon. Ours is more. We have 39 books because we split books in half, like we have 1st and 2nd Kings, Samuel's Chronicles, etc. Their scriptures, all in one, are called the Tanakh, which is an acrostic actually. The T in the word Tanakh stands for the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses. It comes from the word Torah, from yara, which means to cast forth like seed. What does seed do? It grows into a tree and brings forth fruit. So this is exactly what the books of Moses were to do. They were to help the people be fruitful in their new land of milk and honey. So that was the Torah, to cast forth seed. The N in the word Tanakh comes from the word Nevi'im, which means prophets. And these are the prophets like Jeremiah, Isaiah, etc. And their root word is Nava, which means to speak for God. The K in the word Tanakh stands for Ketuvim. It's the writings, and the writings are things like Songs of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, Ruth, Esther, those kind of books. And Ketuvim comes from the word katav, which means to write. So we get Ketuvim, the plural. Now, some people recognize all these 3 categories as just one, and they just call the whole thing the Torah. In other words, God speaking to the people. So if they want to call it all the Torah, that's fine too. The next thing I want to talk about is the talit. The talit was the prayer shawl, and we see that in Numbers 15:37 through 39, when God spoke to Moses and he said, throughout all the generations to come, make tassels on the corners of your garments with a blue cord added on each of the 4 corners. The tassels, right? So the talit is what this prayer shawl is, and every child gets one at their bar mitzvah. The parents give it to them. And for a girl, it's a bat mitzvah. Bar mitzvah just means son of the commandment or daughter of the commandment. Some Jews also consider the prayer shawl their prayer closet because they actually drape it over their head when they pray, and it's like private, like a closet. So there's 3 parts to the prayer shawl, the talit. The tassels themselves are called tzitzit, and they are what they call, tzit means to blossom forth. So that's what these little tassels were at the corners. Now, corner, it was translated corners of your garment, but it's really the word in Hebrew, the kanaf, the corner or edge. Kanaf is the word for wing. So you can see when a man raises his hands in prayer and he's wearing his prayer shawl or the talit, it looks like wings when he has his hands outstretched. So these are the corners of the talit called wings. So this part around the front, where they put it around their forehead, it's got embroidering on it, and it's the Shema prayer. And that's called the crown of the talit, the adara, and it rests on the front of your head. And so those are the 3 parts of the talit. Here's a picture of a talit, and here's the tzitzit coming forth, and there's a specific way that they wind the knots and how many windings they have between each knot. And the custom is that there's power in this because they spell the name of God, and that means power. So interesting, when the woman who was bleeding for 12 years touched the corner of his garment, meaning this, the tzitzit, because he said, I felt power go out from me. So this is where that came from. Now, he said to put these on the four corners of the garment. And it's interesting that the garment, the fringes, has four corners. Four is the number of the whole world. It's a global number. So when you put this around you, it's like you're being surrounded by an authority of a greater kingdom, not just this earth, but God's kingdom. And so this corner is the word kanaf, which I told you, that also means the feathered wings. So these are like feathers, and the actual fabric is like a wing held out. So it's received, as I said, at every bar mitzvah. Now, the idea of being surrounded by this represents the good deeds also. They say sometimes the two seat in front and the two in the back means you're surrounded by good deeds. And this reminds them of their purpose to be a light to the nations and to introduce the one true God to all the other pagan nations around them that had thousands of gods. So sometimes you'll see men drape their heads like a prayer closet, and if they have their sons with them, they'll actually bring the son under the talit as well. So it's like they're welcoming their son, the next generation, into the authority of the one true God. So I love these. This is the crown here, the Adara, and here are the wings, and here's the feathers. Next, I want to talk about the garments that were dyed blue in the early Mishkan and temple. They actually got this blue dye from a snail called a chelazon. And the snail is what gave this blue dye to the high priest's robes back in ancient times. And it also was the dye they used on the blue cord coming out of the tzitzit, right? Well, it's funny, this snail disappeared in Israel for over 1,500 years, but recently, in the last 10 years or so, it's reappeared, and they're like amazed. Nobody's seen this blue colored snail. And I said, oh my gosh, maybe God's bringing them back before they build that third temple. They're going to need that blue dye. So here's somebody picking up one of those snails, and see the dye that stains on his hands? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Now, that dye is called tekelet. And after the Romans defeated Israel in 663 BCE, they decreed that only the blue bloods could wear this expensive blue dyed clothing. And that's where you get that expression. They're the blue bloods, they're the wealthy people. Why? Because these snails were hard to find and they came at a great cost. So by 639 CE, at the time of the Arab conquest, the secret of the tequilette was lost altogether, and then they just disappeared. And nobody's seen them until recently, and they've come back. So it's only been in the last 10 years or so that they've seen these. I put this video in here that you can look at when you're at home. For those of you who are in my class and in my group emails, you'll be getting these PowerPoints. This is a video taken from a house that you can go visit. It's a pretend house, just as a tourist teaching thing, but you can go in and see how they made tools and how a carpenter might have worked. But also they have a section in here about how they dyed the yarn. And so if you go in and start at around minute 3, you click on here and it'll say watch on YouTube. So just click that and it'll take you right to that video. And you can watch that on your own. Now, there's a way that men don this prayer shawl, especially within the synagogues. There's a blessing that's said prior to putting it on. And the larger, longer talits are called talit gadol, and they should be draped over the shoulders, and then temporarily they first wrap it around the head while its ends are thrown over the left shoulder. The reason for throwing it to the left is because we want the tzitzit to surround us so that two are in the front and two in the back, two on the right and two on the left. So it's like, again, the four corners. And of course, that would add up to eight, meaning new beginning. So when you're surrounded by God's power from the tzitzit, then it means that you're starting new each day with the Lord as you pray. Some wonderful traditions, I think, don't you? So I put some things in here about number four, symbolizing the world being a global number. Like there's four corners of the earth, north, south, east, west, four rivers coming out of Eden. There's four rows of three stones in each row of the ephod or the breastplate of the high priest, and so on. So you can look at that. I put a slide in there just so you know number four has some significance. I also put a slide in here that you can watch on YouTube. Um, and it shows a rabbi in Riverside, California. Actually, he did a video on how to go through this tradition of putting the talit on. And so you can go to that, click on it, and also watch that on YouTube, which is very fascinating. It's short, it's like 2 or 3 minutes. So, did you know that Hebrew men are buried with their heads wrapped in their prayer shawl? And only the owner of the talit or prayer shawl was allowed to fold it. So when you took it off, it was yours. You folded it, put it away until you're ready to use it again. So what's interesting is when Yeshua's head was wrapped in a talit, they said they saw the napkin folded. Well, we wouldn't know what that was unless we knew it was a tradition for only the owner of the talit, prayer shawl, could fold it. So that was an indication that Jesus had in fact risen from the dead when he folded the napkin, the talit, and he was signaling to the disciples that he in fact rose from the dead and folded up his own prayer shawl. I wanted to show you also another video that you can go to on YouTube to care for the body of the dead, and it's very fascinating. The men actually volunteer and come and wash the dead body and dress it again and prepare it to meet its creator. It's a beautiful, reverent ceremony, and only the men can clean and clothe the male, and vice versa for women. So this is a video you can go to and actually see the prayers and listen for yourself and watch what they do. They have a dummy mannequin that they use to demonstrate this beautiful procedure. In Malachi, we also hear about this prayer shawl for men, and it says, "The Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings," or kanaf, the corners of the prayer shawl. So you can imagine Jesus standing with his hands raised, the King of Righteousness, and he's standing and he's looking out over Jerusalem, which is behind me in this picture. And he's standing there and he's saying, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I long to gather you, like a hen gathers her chicks under her kanaf, wings." So you can imagine him putting his hands up and saying that prayer and then putting it over his head. Now, the word for this talit or wings in Hebrew, or excuse me, in Greek is kraspedon, but in Hebrew it's the kanaf, and it's the same thing as the corners of the talit. So you can see what Jesus was doing when he said that in Matthew. Now I'd like to talk about the tefillin, which we sometimes call, I see a typo there, I'm going to correct that. We call them phylactery boxes in Greek. Deuteronomy 6:6 God told Moses to have the people bind them, the words of the Torah, as symbols on your hands and your forehead. So traditionally, they place one small box on your left arm, and it has four chambers in it, and they put kosher scribe prayers inside the four chambers. And I'm thinking, well, this is closest to the heart on the left, and the heart has four chambers. So it's like you're taking God's word to heart. I love that tradition. And so those chambers with the kosher scrolls that are written by a scribe, those are the commandments or the good deeds and prayers put on those little pieces of paper inside the box. They also have a way of putting on the boxes on their arm and on their forehead, and how they tie the knots are in letters, different Hebrew letters symbolizing like the shin, the three branch shin, which they use when they say the Shema. Well, they actually tie a knot that looks like a shin when they're downing the tefillin. So here's another YouTube you can watch, and it shows you how to do all that. Also, I wanted to talk about the sects within Judaism. Some people say, well, here's what the Jewish people do. And I always say to them, well, which Jewish people? Because there's different sects. Each one does something slightly different or believes slightly different things. So the ultra-Orthodox Jewish people are called Chabad. They're the Hasidic Jews. Hesed is devoted. That's where you get the word Hasidic Jew. And they celebrate and worship in what's called the Chabad. Chabad is the sect of Judaism. And the Chabad is an acrostic. See the CH, the B, and the D? That stands for the CH in Chokmah, which is wisdom. The B is Bina for understanding, and the D is Da'at for knowledge. So these are mystical values that this kind of mystical Judaism, that's where they get wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and that's what's called Chabad. Now, the Orthodox Jewish people are ones that observe all of the Sabbaths and the traditions and the feast days. Then the conservative Jewish sect today, they kind of pick and choose the obligations that they want to practice or not practice, and that varies all over the world. The Reform is today more traditional and ethical. They stress more on good deeds and mitzvot within your community. It's almost kind of like a half secular and half spiritual kind of mixed together. That's called Reform Judaism. And then there's the atheist, a Jew who's only Jewish through their nationality or genealogy, but they have absolutely no religious activity in their life. And yes, there are atheistic Jewish people. I put this slide in here. This was back in 2020 when I found this slide, but it showed the percent of Jewish people in 2020 was about 73% considered themselves religious. The other 27, no religion at all. So these would have been the atheist. But you can see here that that is growing in the younger population as time goes by. As each generation shrinks down and they get younger and younger, there's less and less religious activity. And this is also true within the church. So we're in a time and a season in the world where the faith of the fathers are not being passed down as faithfully as it could be. And so that is a reality that both Jew and Gentile believers face today. So those are some of the traditions in their culture that I wanted you to know about. And today we have more letters to learn. We're going to learn four letters: the samek, the ayin, the pei, and the tsade. Now, pei has another form called fe, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then these are two letters that have the final or end final form called sofit. And you can see that it looks different than the others. And this one looks like he's sitting, and this one looks like he's standing up. So there is a slight difference in those ending Sophie letters. Now, I put this review slide in here for those of you who've taken my class in person. This morning, we went over all these words and we reviewed them together and had the class sound out each word. So we sounded out the first one and named all the letters. This is the Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Sofit. These are both A vowels, so that's the word Adam or Adam. Then we did the Bet and the Nun Sofit with the E vowel, and that was Ben, which means son or heir. This is the Yod and the A vowel with the Dalet, and that was Yad, which means hand in Hebrew. This is a Mem with an A Bet with the U vowel. Remember, this one looks like he's going down a slide and he's going, ooh. Okay, so that's B and a U, and this is the Lamed, the long, long, tall letter. So this is the word Mabul, which is a flood. So I said to everybody, look, you're in your 5th week and you're reading Hebrew. This one is the Lamed, the Chet, that's the one that makes the throaty sound. And this is a Mem Sofit, final Mem. And there's 2 E vowels. So this is Lechem, Lechem. And that means bread in Hebrew. This is the Hey, 2 E vowels. This is a vet or a V sound, and this is another Lamed or L. So this is Hevel. Hevel is the word, and it means vanity. And this is what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes. Hevel, Hevel, all is vanity, vanity. And this last one is the Lamed with the E vowel, and this is the vet, so V. Lev is lev or heart in Hebrew. So we practiced that in class. That was fun. And then we practiced men's names in the Bible. This is a Dalet, a Vav, and a Dalet with an A and an I vowel. So this is David or David. And then this is Nun with an O dot on top. And remember, I said when a het is at the end of a word, you say the vowel first. So this is Noach, and that's Noah's name. Here we have Aleph with an E, a Lamed with an O, a Hey with an I, and a final Mem. So this is Elohim, Elohim, or God. And the last one, Aleph with an A vowel. This is a vet, so it's A and a V. This is a Sheva. Sheva is a syllable marker here. So this is the first syllable, Av. And then we have a Resh, which you haven't learned yet. You'll learn that in our last class. But this is an R with an A under it. So it's R-A, and this is a het. Hey, excuse me, with an A under it, and then a final mem. So this is Avraham, or Abraham in English. So see, you're learning to read Hebrew. And I'm going to remove that now so that you can see all of this. This is the word Laban, and it means white, and it's the name of the moon. And this is the name of a star, Kokav. This is a kaf with a O. This is a kaf without the dot, but it's still the K sound. This is an A vowel, so ko-ka, and this is the vet or V sound. So Kokav, Kokav is a star in Hebrew. So when he says, I'll make you, multiply you, is multiplied as the kokovim, the stars. That's the plural of kokav, kokavim. So that was our practice session. Now let's look at each letter just quickly. Everybody has a handout, so I'm not going to go over this in great detail. The samek looks kind of like a circle, and it's the S sound. The ancient symbol was like a thorn. It was like a A thorny bush. This is what protected some animals. Snakes hid in these thorny bushes, so that was the original symbol. But it has a nuance of protecting. Samak means also to lay hold of. So it's where you put hands on someone. And so that is another picture of that, samek. It's number 60 in Hebrew. And I remember it because to remember the S sound, I just say samek surrounds like a circle. Samek is surrounds like a circle. And that's the meaning of it, to surround. So that's how I remember that one. The next letter is called an ayin. Ayin is the ancient symbol of an eye because ayin is the word for eye. And this is a silent letter, just like the aleph. This one is also silent. We don't know how to pronounce it till we put a vowel point either above it or below it, etc. And it's also the name of a well or a spring. They call it the eye of the earth. So if you're up high and you're looking down at water, it reflects the heavens and it's reflective like an eye, looking into an eye. And so that's what's called a well or a spring. It's number 70. And I remember this because it looks like two people eyeing each other. And so I put a little arrow between the two heads as if they're eyeing each other. And that's how I remember that letter. I wanted to show you the eye of the earth, the ayin. This is in Croatia. This is a lake. And look, there's a person laying there. And it looks like an eye from the sky, doesn't it? So you can see how ayin means eye, because that's what it looks like. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, let's look at the letter pay. It is the P or the F in Hebrew and in English. When it has a dot, the way I remember this is it looks like a person's profile, people with profiles. So I remember, oh, that's P, people with profiles. But if the dot is missing, I call them faceless. See, no longer it looks like a face. So that's the F sound. So that's the fe. This is the pay for P, portrait, profile, people. This one is faceless. So I know that's the fe right here. And then if it's at the end of a word, this curved part just goes straight down. And that's called pay or fay so feet. So it's at the end of a word, it looks quite different, but similar if you just look at the top part. The ancient symbol was a mouth because pay means mouth, and that's the name of the letter. So it has something to do with when you see a pay in a word, something to do with speaking or a nuance of the mouth or face to face. It's number 80. So if you're going to look up a scripture that's the 80th verse, instead of 80 in front of the verse, you'll see a pay. So that's why you have to know the numbers of the letters. So that's pay and pay so feet. And then the last letter is called tsade. And it has the TS sound, as in pizza. It's a TS, tsa. And I remember this because this guy is looking away and this guy's looking at his head. I put two little faces here and he's trying to get his attention and he's going tss, 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 like, hey, pay attention to me. Tss, tss. Like when we go psst, same kind of thing. So it's silly, I know, but it does help because if you memorize he's got his back turned and he's going tss, tss, you go, oh, that's the tsade. And the ancient letter looked like a man laying down because tsade means to hunt or to lay on your side and lay in wait. And that's number 90. And I already told you the memory tool, trying to get somebody's attention. And that's why I use that. Now, there's a couple miscellaneous handouts that I gave to the people who were in class today. One of the ways to remember tsade is one, it looks like regular one, like he's on his knees praying, and then suddenly he stands up. The ancient symbol tsade is an ancient hook, and it was a hook at one time, and that's because it's a hunting tool. And it looks like maybe the man kneeling as a suffering king and then standing up as an exalted king when he comes the second time. Sadi is in the word sadiq, and it is to be righteous. So, see, in the future, there's laid up for me the crown of righteousness. The righteous judge will award me. So, it's almost like the Saudi is standing up and giving us our reward. So somebody did that online and I thought it was cool and I put it in a slide. And here's another reference to Psalm 32. Be glad and rejoice, you righteous ones. So see, you who are upright in heart. So it's like a humble man who stands up because now he's considered holy. And so that looks like the Saudi Sofit at the end. And so that is the teaching for today. There's another slide in here that shows you that ayin is the beginning letter of the word Eber, and that's where we get the word Hebrew because they were the first to cross over. That's what Eber means, to cross over, and that's where you get the name Hebrew. And so if you change two letters and you put the R before the bet, or now this is a vet, but you can see if you switch these two letters, the Hebrew meaning to cross over and wanting to follow God, it's the word for evening or to be unpure or mixed up, because evening is a mixture of daylight and night. So Erev is to mix up. So isn't that interesting? Don't mess with the letters. You switch those two and you get from the children who want to follow to those who are mixed up and confused and unpure. Thought that was interesting when they said don't change any of the letters. Then the enlarged ayin is here in the word in the prayer of Shema, and then you see an enlarged dalet at the end. You put the two of them together and it spells witness. So ayin is also the beginning of the word for to witness, and it means to see, an eye, and this is the dalet, which means a door. An eye at the door is a witness. So interesting how they point that out, isn't it? And then also one other word that starts with the ayin is the arla, and it speaks of the body part that's circumcised. So that's the word for to circumcise the body part, and it can be circumcised in a male, or your ears, or your heart, or your lips. All of them are called an arla. Did you know that trees also have restrictions? Because this is what that word means. They're all restricted from hearing, understanding, or lips can be circumcised when they remain silent. They need to be circumcised and released, you see? So when you circumcise a male at 8 days, you're releasing the seed. You see that? And then also, trees have to lie dormant 3 years before you can harvest the seed from the fruit. And so this period is called the Orla. So it comes from this word, and that's the 3 years of no harvesting. There's restrictions there. So you can see all these words that start with the ayin. Very interesting. And so that's why I put those slides in there for you. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And I'm going to stop the recording. I hope that you had a good time learning all these things. I hope you're practicing your letters. And don't forget to sing your song. Aleph, bet, bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Go to YouTube and look that up. That helps you know the sequence of your letters. So you want that song to run through your head. When I'm looking up words in my etymological dictionary, I still sometimes will sing the song to make sure I get my letters right. Although by this time I know them. I'm thinking way back in the beginning when I was first learning my letters, I really needed to sing the song in order to remember. Let's see, which comes first, the mem or the lamed? So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this class, and I'll see you next week for our last class, and we'll be going over some key things on how to put Hebrew on your computers or your laptops, and also how to use the Blue Letter Bible for personal study. So I'll see you next week for more Hooked on Hebrew. Shalom.